Hi, I'm Mr. McTaggart. In this video we are going to look at an introduction to tolerance. Prior knowledge, all you need to be able to do in this video is some basic addition and subtraction of decimals and whole numbers. I think I've also snuck a wee percentage in there as well. So our lesson intention is to be able to understand what the term tolerance means in mathematics and to use it in context, that means in real life, to identify what is unacceptable. So have you heard the word tolerance before anywhere in real life? I bet you have. You've certainly heard of intolerant. Intolerant means things that people can't eat. So maybe lactose intolerant means they can't eat like dairy products. And then, so in reverse, tolerate means things that you can. If you ever heard your parents or something say to you, I will not tolerate this behaviour. Well, that means they're not going to put up with it. That's the same in maths. This is what tolerance means. Let me show you in a couple of examples. So when you search for a holiday online, they ask you what date you'd like to travel and how flexible you are. And then you might have ever seen this, your parents certainly will. When you come to put in the days, there's a bit here that says either give or take 4 days, or in most websites it says this, plus or minus 3 days. So what that means in this one here, that on the I wanted to fly on the 28th of February, but I was willing to go 3 days later or 3 days earlier. That's what it means when it says plus or minus. And plus or minus is a wee sign denoted by that with a plus, slash and minus. A place in the classroom, you might have heard of tolerance before, but it's never been used with that name, is let's say you had a test and you were to draw an angle, or even just any kind of angle work you're doing. It's really difficult to be 100% accurate, isn't it? You might be 1 or 2 degrees out. If you're more than that, your teacher would say that's not acceptable, because we operate on a part of tolerance where you're allowed to be 2 degrees out. That means you can be 2 degrees above or 2 degrees below. So for a 30-degree angle, we would accept anything between 28 and 32. Anything smaller than that, not acceptable. Anything bigger than 32, not acceptable. And the way we write it is like this. So that means 30 plus or minus 2. So it means you can be 2 above 30 and 2 below 30. So this is the bit you would probably start copying down if this was your lesson. So tolerance is the degree of accuracy required in a measurement or the acceptable range of values that will be allowed. And the notation used is this plus or minus symbol, and then it's got a numerical value either side, okay? So here are my examples. For each one of these, we're going to write down what the minimum and maximum allowable sizes are. Now, that means the highest and lowest. It's a fancy way of saying that, minimum and maximum. So to get the minimum, that means you take away first. So for this first one, 24 plus or minus 4, the minimum is 25 take away 4, which is 21. And the maximum would be 25 plus 4, whoopsie-daisy, which is 29 kilograms. And it's perfectly okay for these of you who can do it mentally, just to do it in your head and go straight to the answer. So the minimum would be 21 and the maximum would be 29. For my second one here, 8.1 plus or minus 0.4 metres. So for your minimum, you're going to do 8.1 take away 0.4. And then your maximum, you're going to do 8.1 plus 0.4. Now the maximum is generally always a wee bit easier to do because we're all better at adding than we are taking away. Now if you're doing decimals, my number one trick is, if you don't want to do a sum, is think of it as money. Think of this, it is not as 8.1 take away 0.4, but think of it as £8.10 take away 40p, and I guarantee you can do it that much quicker. The alternative is, so you come down to the side and you do a wee take away sum like that, borrow from the 8 that becomes 7, 11 take away 4 is 7, 7 take away 0 is 7. So the minimum here would be 7.7, and the maximum would be adding on the 0.4, so that one would be 8.5. And I know most of you will be able to do that in your head because it's just adding the 1 and the 4 on. Okay, my next one, 4.24 plus or minus 0.05. So sometimes the decimals get a wee bit trickier when they go to more decimal places. So I'm going to write the sums out first. So the minimum would be 4.24 take away 0.05. And your maximum is adding on. So again, think of this as money. right? It's not millimetres for a second, it's money. That's £4.24, take away 5 pence. I bet you could all then tell me, well, that's £4.19. So 4.19 millimetres for that one. And for the maximum, you're adding 5 on to the 24, so it's 4.29 millimetres. Okay. Now for part D, I've put in a wee percentage here. So what we need to be able to do for part D is be able to work out what 20% of 35 is. So my first sum would be saying 20% equals, now 2 ways to get 20%. 20% is a fifth. So you could do 35 divided by 5, which is 7, okay? The other way is, I know a lot of my pupils like to get 10% and then double it. 10% of 35 is moving that imaginary dot in one place and making it 3.5. So if 10% is 3.5, double that, you get 7. Either way, it's 7, all right? So we then just need to add and take away 7 on this one. So my minimum would be 35 take away 7. I don't have room to put the sum in this time. Let's squeeze it in, which is 28. And my maximum would be 35 plus 7, which is 42. Okay, what do you think of them? They're not too bad, are they? Don't get thrown by these brackets and units and things at the side. It's not a huge deal, all right? It's the numbers that matter. So basically what we've worked out here is if we put a story then around these, you'd be then saying that anything between, for example, part A, anything between 21 and 29 would be acceptable. So if I then said, oh, well, one of the parcels came in and it weighed 20 kilograms, you'd be like, oh, wait a minute. No, that's out with the acceptable range of values. So this is what we're going to look at now. So, question 2. Tolerance is used all the time in engineering, any kind of job that uses measurement, okay? So this one we've got a customer puts in an order for nails of length 34 millimetres plus or minus 0.5 millimetres. Now 0.5 millimetres, think how tiny and minuscule that is, right? But you need your screws to be a certain size, otherwise they're not maybe going to fit what they're meant for, okay? So what we've got here is we want to know what the maximum and minimum acceptable length of the nails are, all right? So let's do the minimum first. So the minimum would be 34 take away 0.5, so that takes you down to 33.5. Your maximum would be 34 plus 0.5, which takes you to 34.5. So we are allowed anything between these values. So then part B, this is a true part to the question, is trying to decide, right, what's allowed. So I've got 3 nails here and it says which of these nails are acceptable. So 34.6, now you'll notice straight away 34.6 is too big, right? So that is not acceptable. 34.2 is okay, that's between the two, so that's perfect. And 33.4 is too small because that's under 33.5. So if the question says which are acceptable, you would just say that this one was acceptable. And be careful though, because sometimes the question will say which ones are rejected or not acceptable, which is when you write down the other two. So it's really easy to muddle these up, so just be careful for me, okay? So this is a point where you pause the video and you can go try these ones for me. There's a couple of wee percentage ones in at the end, but hopefully they'll be okay. And remember my trick, if the adding and taking away of decimals is tricky, do a sum or think of them as money, right? Turn them into money. We're also really good at adding money. So pause the video, try these, and then when you're done, unpause it and you'll be able to check your answers. Now, I've actually also got 2 of the 3 context questions as well in here, okay, so extra questions. So you can try these. Again, pause the video, and then you've got all your other ones, all your answers when you're done. So that is the answers to the questions. And just to point out, I just wrote minimum and maximum. So I've always done the minimum number first and then the maximum number in the answers. Okay, so what have I learned? Well, we've learned that the word tolerance pretty much means the same in maths. It means to put up with what you accept. We've learned how to calculate the tolerance by basically adding and subtracting. That's all we've done today. And we've learned how to answer a question in context based on tolerance. And remember that tip, read it carefully. Are we accepting or are we rejecting? Okay, thanks very much.